Northern China burns. The horizon glows red beneath pillars of smoke. Villages stand empty, fortresses collapse behind shattered gates. And across the frozen plains, thousands flee south carrying what little remains of their lives. But this war did not begin with Genghis Khan. It began decades earlier, when the rulers of northern China tried to break the Mongols before they could ever unite. For generations, the Jin dynasty ruled northern China like an empire of iron. Their armies controlled the Great Wall, their cavalry dominated the frontier, and beyond those walls, the Mongol tribes fought endlessly across the steppe. The Jin emperors encouraged it. They bribed rival tribes, turned clans against each other, and whenever a Mongol leader grew too powerful, they crushed him. One Mongol Khan was captured, nailed to a wooden frame, and executed beneath the open sky. The message was clear. The steppe existed to kneel before the empire. But in the late 12th century, something began to change. A single leader was rising among the Mongols, and unlike the chiefs before him, this man would unite the tribes. His name was Temujin. The world would remember him by another title, Genghis Khan. By 1206, Genghis Khan had done what many believed impossible. The fractured Mongol tribes were united beneath one banner. Horse archers from across the steppe now answered to a single ruler, and that terrified the Jin dynasty. For decades, the Jin emperors had controlled the steppe through division. Now, that system was collapsing. In 1210, a delegation from the Jin court arrived before Genghis Khan. They carried a message from the new emperor, Wanyan Yongji. The Mongols were ordered to submit as vassals. It was not a negotiation, it was a command. The Jin believed they still ruled the steppe. According to Mongol accounts, Genghis Khan listened in silence. Then he turned south toward the Jin Empire and spat onto the ground. Without another word, he mounted his horse and rode away. The envoys were left choking in the dust. It was more than an insult. It was a declaration of war. When news reached the Jin emperor, he responded with contempt. "Our empire is like the sea. Yours is only a handful of sand." The court laughed. But beyond the Great Wall, the sand was beginning to move. In early 1211, Genghis Khan summoned a Kurultai, a great gathering of the Mongol tribes. War against the Jin dynasty would not be decided by one man alone. The clans debated for days, and during that time, Genghis Khan disappeared into the mountains, alone. According to Mongol chronicles, he removed his belt and hat before the eternal blue sky, and there he prayed. Not as a conqueror, but as the son of a people who had suffered generations of humiliation. He spoke of murdered ancestors, broken tribes, executions, slavery, and the long cruelty of the Jin dynasty. Then, after days of silence, Genghis Khan returned and declared that heaven itself had promised victory. The Mongols would ride south, not simply for conquest, but for vengeance. In 1211, the Mongol invasion began. Tens of thousands of horsemen thundered toward the borders of the Jin Empire. The Jin believed the Great Wall would stop them. It did not. At Wushabao, Mongol forces smashed through frontier defenses and flooded into northern China. Then came one of the most disastrous mistakes in Jin military history. At Yehuling Pass, the Jin army prepared an ambush in the mountains. But before the battle began, a Jin messenger defected to the Mongols. He revealed the army's entire position. The Mongols struck immediately. The Jin lines collapsed into chaos. Retreating soldiers were hunted through narrow mountain roads. Thousands died. The road into northern China was now open. and the Mongols did not stop. While Genghis advanced south, his general Jeb rode east into Manchuria and captured the Jin eastern capital. The empire was being attacked from multiple directions at once, faster than the Jin court could react. The Mongols soon reached Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing, one of the greatest cities in Asia. Massive walls surrounded the capital. The defenses were too strong for immediate conquest, so the Mongols changed tactics. Instead of taking the city, they destroyed everything around it. Northern China was devastated. Fields burned, supply routes collapsed, entire regions were pillaged, and inside the Jin Empire, fear spread rapidly. Then the betrayals began. Khitan leaders rebelled against the Jin. Chinese generals defected. Entire units surrendered to the Mongols. The Jin dynasty was not simply being invaded, it was being abandoned. Even worse, the Mongols learned from every campaign. They adapted constantly. After suffering setbacks in early sieges, they returned stronger each time. By 1213, the Mongol offensives had become relentless. Wave after wave struck the empire. The Jin armies were shattered. Mountain passes fell, fortresses collapsed, and soon, Genghis Khan surrounded Zhongdu itself. The imperial court panicked. Inside the capital, a coup erupted. The emperor was murdered by one of his own generals. A new ruler took the throne amid the chaos. And facing total destruction, the Jin court surrendered temporarily. Tribute flooded into the Mongol camp. Gold, silk, supplies. Even a Jurchen princess was sent to marry Genghis Khan. At last, the Mongols withdrew. For a moment, it seemed the war was over. But the Jin made one catastrophic mistake. The emperor abandoned Zhongdu and moved the capital south to Kaifeng. To the Mongols, it looked like weakness, and weakness invited attack. In 1215, the Mongols returned. This time, they came to finish the war. The defenders of Zhongdu were isolated. Supplies dwindled. Morale collapsed. Then another disaster struck. A Jin commander defected to the Mongols, bringing troops with him. Soon more officers surrendered. Entire sections of the defense began disintegrating from within. Zhongdu was no longer a capital. It was a dying fortress surrounded by betrayal. On June 1st, 1215, the city finally fell. Mongol forces poured through the gates. One of the richest cities in Asia descended into horror. Palaces burned. Smoke consumed the skyline. And the Jin dynasty lost control of northern China forever. But Genghis Khan was not yet master of all China. The Jin Empire still survived in the south. And while the Mongols pushed deeper into Asia, the war would continue for nearly 20 more years. The deadliest phase was still ahead. The destruction of Zhongdu shocked the medieval world. An empire that once believed itself eternal had been broken by horsemen from the steppe. But the Mongols were changing too. They were no longer raiders. They were becoming conquerors, administrators, rulers of cities, masters of empires. And beyond the burning ruins of northern China, new enemies were already waiting. The Jin dynasty still fought on from Kaifeng. The Southern Song watched nervously from the south. And deep in Central Asia, another war was about to explode. One that would transform Genghis Khan from a steppe warlord into the terror of the world. Even after the fall of Beijing, the Jin dynasty refused to die. Its emperors fled south, its armies regrouped, and across northern China, fortresses still resisted Mongol rule. For years, the war dragged on. Cities starved. Entire provinces collapsed into ruin, and the Mongols learned something terrifying. China could not be conquered through raids alone. it had to be strangled slowly, destroyed piece by piece. So after the death of Genghis Khan in 1227, his successors prepared for total war. And this next phase of the invasion would become even more brutal than the first. The Mongols return. After Genghis Khan died, many believed the Mongol Empire would fracture. Instead, it expanded faster than ever. His son, Ogedei Khan, took power and immediately resumed the war against the Jin dynasty. Peace negotiations failed. Mongol envoys were killed. The war reignited. At first, the Jin fought surprisingly well. Several Mongol offensives were defeated. Experienced generals like Wanyan Heda slowed the invaders repeatedly. But the Mongols adapted again and again and again. By 1231, they launched one of the most sophisticated military campaigns in medieval history. A massive three-pronged invasion aimed directly at Kaifeng, the Jin capital. One Mongol army would strike from the north, another from the east, and a third force led by Tolui would move through Song territory to attack from the south. The Jin never expected it. Wanyan Heda marched with 200,000 men to stop Tolui. He prepared a deadly ambush in the mountains near Dengzhou. Cavalry waited hidden behind the hills. The Mongols rode directly toward the trap. Then suddenly, they changed course. Tolui's spies had uncovered everything. Instead of charging blindly forward, the Mongols sent light cavalry around the valley. The ambushers became the ambushed. The Jin army fought fiercely at Mount Yu, but the Mongols did not need immediate victory. They needed exhaustion. As the Jin armies chased them, Mongol riders destroyed supply depots behind the lines. Food stores burned, roads were cut. Entire counties vanished into smoke. Soon the Jin army was starving. And then winter arrived. At Sanfangshan, three-peaked hill, the exhausted Jin army stumbled through a blizzard. The soldiers had barely eaten for days. Their faces turned pale from the cold. Men collapsed in the snow before battle even began. The Mongols watched silently, waiting. They deliberately left an escape route open. And when the Jin troops finally retreated, the Mongols struck. The collapse was catastrophic. The Jin army disintegrated almost instantly. Thousands were slaughtered while fleeing through the snow. Wanyan Heda was killed. Most of the empire's best commanders died beside him. The road to Kaifeng was now open, and this time, there would be no escape. Finally, in 1232, the Mongols surrounded Kaifeng, one of the greatest cities in the world. Inside the walls, panic spread rapidly. Famine began. Disease followed. The Jin emperor desperately searched for allies, and in desperation, he turned to the southern Song dynasty. The Jin warned them, "If the Mongols destroy us, you will be next." But the Song ignored the warning. Instead, they allied with the Mongols. They supplied food, opened routes, supported the invasion. The Song believed they were destroying an old enemy. In reality, they were feeding the empire that would one day destroy them too. Inside Kaifeng, the fighting became desperate. The defenders used terrifying new weapons, fire lances, primitive gunpowder flamethrowers capable of blasting fire and shrapnel into Mongol ranks. The Mongols adapted quickly. Soon they began using Chinese siege engineers and captured gunpowder weapons themselves. The war was evolving, and China was changing warfare forever. Kaifeng eventually fell, but the Jin emperor escaped south again. The dynasty was collapsing into chaos. Court officials murdered one another. Coups erupted. Supplies vanished. Even loyal armies began abandoning the throne. Then came one final disaster. the Song dynasty officially joined the war against the Jin. Now the empire faced enemies from both sides, Mongols from the north, Song armies from the south. The remaining Jin forces retreated to Kaizu. There, the final siege began. The defenders fought with desperation because they understood the truth. There was nowhere left to run. Inside the city, starvation consumed the population. Yet the resistance continued month after month. Finally, in February 1234, the walls were breached. The Jin emperor realized the dynasty was finished. Rather than be captured, he committed suicide. His successor ruled for less than a single day before being killed in battle. After more than a century of rule, the Jin dynasty was gone. Northern China had been devastated. Millions were dead, displaced, or starving. Ancient cities had vanished beneath war and famine. But the Mongols were not merely destroyers. Cities that surrendered were often spared. Engineers, craftsmen, scholars, and physicians were protected and absorbed into the empire. Defectors from China and the Khitan kingdoms helped the Mongols build an entirely new imperial system. This was no longer a nomadic invasion. It was the birth of a new world empire. And now, only one great Chinese power remained: the Southern Song dynasty, the same kingdom that had helped destroy the Jin. Soon, the Mongols would come for them too, and the conquest of all China would finally begin. The war against the Jin dynasty transformed the Mongols forever. It taught them siege warfare, administration, gunpowder technology, and how to conquer massive civilizations. The invasion that began as revenge ended by reshaping the history of Asia forever. But Mongols are not done. Subscribe so you won't miss the second part: Song Dynasty versus the Mongols.